You've just entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. If you've come for actual legal advice, you need to turn right around, honey. You need to get out of here, 'cause you ain't gonna get none of that. They quibble, and they squabble, and they bicker. But if you want to hear meaningless opinions, this is the right place. They got plenty of that. Stuff that makes no sense at all. They go off on tangents. It's crazy talk. If that's your thing, keep listening. They'll keep talking.
Oh no no, oh no no, it's another episode of the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. You've entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Yay!
Welcome back to another episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on this May 1st, 2021. Holy cow, we've been in over a year of a pandemic, but we're very, very happy to have our next guest today. His name is Mickey Burns, and he is a longtime talk show host from New York City, where he's had a show on New York City media for over 20 years, or approximately 20 years, as well as being in the television industry for a much longer period of time, probably about 40 years. And he's also the author of the book Projects to Profiles, which is a memoir of his life and where he came from. And he's also going to be our fake guest attorney as we deal with our client later on the show, Dad Jokes, Pinnacle of Western Civilization. So that is our client for the day, but we'll get to that later. But Mickey, as a very experienced and well-groomed talk show host, what do you think was the hardest thing about starting your own talk show?
Well, that's a good question. I guess the most important thing was to get a network interested in airing it. That's easy as it sounds.
Well, I don't know how easy that sounds either. I mean, did you give them a lot of money? How does that work?
No. I was at the time. I was interestingly, it's interesting. I was doing a news magazine Warner in New York City, and in each episode we ran like a 4-minute celebrity profile. Okay, so I would come back to the studio all the time and say to the guys, I just interviewed Tony Orlando, who was on Broadway, doing something on Broadway. And I would come back with like a 30-minute interview, which was fabulous. And I said, we can only use 4 minutes of this great interview. And the celebrities that we've been interviewing love to talk about themselves. We should do another show, a long form interview show, and call it Profiles, and actually profile these celebrities. So we started to do that with Time Warner, and we, I guess, did about 12 or 13 episodes. And at that time, Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor, and he decided that we needed that he would have liked to create his own network in New York City. And he did, and he called it NYC Media. And we approached the people that were running that network. And see, we already had like a season worth in the can with people like Isaac Hayes and Chuck Mangione and Darlene Love and Melba Moore, Pat Cooper. So we approached them with one season, and they were just a startup network. And they loved the concept. They loved the shows. And they acquired us in 2002. So it's been 20 years.
Wow. I have a dad joke regarding Isaac Hayes that, he and I met once many, many years ago. We'll get into that later when we deal with the client. But
yeah. He was a nice man.
So you said you were with Time Warner. Was that Time Warner Cable at the time, or was that like part of a network?
No, that was a Time Warner Cable was a network in New York City. And we would do a magazine called Special Edition.
Okay.
Which was, you covered breaking news and newsmakers of the day. And then we threw in a celebrity, because we're in New York, a celebrity profile, and it worked perfectly.
Did you ever interview Chef Tell?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with local New York celebrity Chef Tell? Used to be on PM Magazine.
I probably should be, but I am not.
Chef Tell, that rings a bell. Isn't that from like the 70s or something? Great.
Yeah, maybe early 80s even. He made it. He was on I think it was called PM Magazine. That was the New York City.
Right, because I was working back in the 80s. I was working at Fox, And, I was doing the 10 o'clock news.
Oh,
Hey,
wow.
and they had a current affair was their big show back then.
Oh, yeah.
With
Well, I think
Maury.
Current Affair came out of PM Magazine because I think Maury Povich, who
Yeah,
was in Current Affair, started in like PM Magazine. Because I remember PM
Could be.
Magazine, and back in the early '80s, I think I was in Washington State at the time. My dad
Right.
was military, so I moved around a lot. But I remember watching PM Magazine. So that wasn't just for New York State, Greg. That was
Oh, I thought it was.
different cities had their own PM magazines. They would be more localized, but I think this guy Chef Tell you're talking about, who I haven't thought about in like 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's like you're bringing that up. Oh, you're making my teeth feel like they're falling out of my head.
So when did the profiles actually start? What year was that? In
That
2002?
like 99.
Okay.
So
Who was some of the early interviewees that you were really amazed with?
Yeah, the first one we did was Chuck Mangione.
Yeah.
Then I think we did comedian Pat Cooper.
Wait, when he had Chuck Mangione on, did he just play the flugelhorn and not talk? Because that's what his music is like. There's no talking in it. And
Right.
Yeah.
No, he's very verbal. He was a great interview. He actually explained to me what a flugelhorn was. I had no idea. I thought a trumpet was a trumpet.
Yeah.
But I learned the difference. He was a great interview. And I think then we had Melba Moore, Julie we had and it from Staten Island was not easy. Getting celebrities to come to Staten Island to do the interview at the beginning.
oh, so you were located on the island. Okay, that's interesting. So
and
what
then
did you do? Did you helicopter them over? I'm sure you had a huge budget.
We limoed them in from
Did you really?
wherever they were in the city. And we did the initial season at a place called the Music Hall at the Snug Harbor Cultural Center. And it was the second oldest music hall in New York City next to Carnegie Hall. And it's a beautiful facility and they loved it, but it wasn't easy getting them because, they still had to figure in the travel time, if they're coming from Midtown, Staten Island, from where we were, that was like a 40-minute drive. So they, a lot of them didn't like that. They wanted, most of the celebrities that come in that are promoting something, they want to do Good Day New York, the Today Show, Sirius Radio, and we're all in like a 10-block area.
Right.
So we moved our show into Times Square. We've been doing it there for the last several years.
Oh, I got you. Snug Harbor Cultural Center is the name of Greg's favorite chair. I'm joking. Anyway, so
Dad joke.
at least it should be at
Save it for the dad joke section.
But how did you persuade these bigger name celebrities to do your particular talk show? I mean, at the time, I don't know what your viewership was, but I'm sure it wasn't like spanning the East.
No. I think originally our viewership was just on Staten Island at Time Warner, just in Staten Island.
Right.
So it wasn't easy to get them, but we were doing this news magazine, and I met a lot of these celebrities through my work at Fox News and also doing the news magazine. So I started to develop relationships with publicists and managers and record labels. So when we started to do profiles, we were able to get a lot of these celebrities off of relationships that we had garnered.
I got it. So you basically got in with the correct people, became friendly with them, did a lot of limoing around a publicist, I'm assuming, to get their attention.
Go to Manhattan, which was very quick. We did the show for a year or two from that music hall, and then we moved into Manhattan. And once we got to Manhattan, we had no trouble getting celebrities to come over.
And just to go on a completely different tack, that reminded me that, you were kind of born and raised in Staten Island in the projects.
Yep.
And somehow you wound up going to college in Missouri on a football scholarship.
Right.
I'm just curious, like, how did that school find you in Staten Island to offer you, or how did you find them either way to get the scholarship?
That's a good question. And what happened was when I was playing football on Staten Island at a place called Newdorf High School, I had a good career there. Matter of fact, my senior year, I was the city scoring champion. So I was being recruited not only by the School of Missouri, but by many other colleges.
Mhm.
Just happened that Staten Island had what I guess in those days would be called a scout. And the scout was working with the coach at Missouri Valley College. So he had been pushing me to go there from when I was a junior on. And several other outstanding players from my high school went to that school.
That's so strange.
Open
So Missouri specifically targeted your high school for recruits.
Well, yeah, because our high school was a perennial powerhouse in New York City,
Yeah.
and they were a perennial powerhouse in the Midwest.
Were they like a division double A school, or
They were AAA,
triple A? Okay.
but they were always in the top 10 in the country in that division.
Okay.
It was a football powerhouse.
Did you study journalism in college?
I did.
Oh, good.
That was
call
your
there,
degree?
Greg.
Yeah, I wanted to go into journalism right out of school. I wanted to be what I'm doing now. But in those days, it was BC. You know what that stands for?
Before Christ?
Before communications.
Before cable.
Before cable.
Ah,
We lived then.
yeah, I remember.
Channels, that was it. So I realized when I about to graduate, I said, if I wanted to do this, I would have had to have first gone to Boise, Idaho, and then maybe to Biloxi, Mississippi,
Yeah,
and maybe
right.
several years of honing my skills, I would maybe get back to Philadelphia if I was really good at it.
Yeah.
So I did, I wanted to come home to the Big Apple. I did, and I started to teach and coach for 3 years before I got into my broadcasting career.
You about teach and coach football?
Yes, I did, and I coached
okay.
basketball. Well,
So were you working at like a high school, or?
I was.
Okay.
I started at my old high school as an assistant football coach to the coach that coached me.
Interesting. So you transitioned from acting as a coach into TV. At what point? What made you to finally decide to leave the coaching?
It was it was an accident kind of thing.
Uh,
A lot of the guys that I played golf with on the weekend just happened to work at Fox News. They were cameramen. One guy was one of the anchors there.
golf
and-
rears its ugly head in people's careers again.
Right. So I played golf all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I also was in the music industry and had my own band.
Oh,
Very familiar with sound equipment.
so are you a
So-
singer, or are you a?
Was
Okay.
a singer.
What kind of music was it, Mickey?
I bet he was a crooner.
Well, I did all. Let me 1 second. Let me get my record. Hold on.
He's got a record too.
Cool.
This was my record back. Can you see it? Let's see.
Wow.
Yeah, it's Aldo Nova.
That looks like. Oh, me.
You look like you were very successful at Studio 54.
He
and
did
the
not look like he was
discotheques.
happy with that microphone though. He was like, that's not going to get anywhere near my face.
You know where I used to work all the time, which you'd get a kick out of, in Dangerfields.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was great because they had a comedy act, and then musical act, a comedy act, and a musical act. Rodney was there all the time because he would break in his new routine,
Okay.
And if it went over in his club, then he would use it as he went out, on TV and things like that. But it was a great place to perform. The first show was packed. You would do like a 10 o'clock show and a 1 o'clock show. The 10 o'clock show was packed. The second show at 1 o'clock, there would be like 5 people from Idaho, half, in the can, sitting in the corner. Have to do the same show at 1 o'clock that you did at 10 o'clock. It was a good training ground.
So did you ever get Dangerfield to come on to your interview program?
No, because he was dead by that time.
Oh, I didn't realize he had died that early. Okay.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
late 90s.
I could have had he, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, another thing with Rodney, my connection with him, it was funny because I also had a bar restaurant on Staten Island, which I owned with my brother for a number of years.
You are like a Renaissance man, aren't you?
I guess. I don't know.
You're all over the place.
Busy. But when he was doing, what was his first movie? Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh,
Back to
that's
School?
Back to School.
No, that was the second. I love that one.
Ladybugs. I don't know.
Easy Money.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
Easy Money.
That was funny with him and Joe Pesci. It was hilarious. But they have some bar scenes in that movie, and it was between my bar and another bar, an old man's bar, and they picked the old man's bar.
It's like one of those old lounges where all the old guys just go to die.
I asked the brother, you can't put a good word in for me. So I have nothing to do with the locations, you know.
Yeah, that's the kind of bar I hang out at, Matt.
Yeah.
Those bars. That's my menu.
I think that these days, Greg, you belong in those places.
I do.
You know, they stopped drinking almost, you know. I mean, they don't drink like they used to.
No, that's true.
Everyone was drinking. Today, they're afraid to drink and get in their car.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, really.
It really is.
Because some of those guys, man, they would stagger out of those places and
yes, they would.
get into their giant steel vehicles that could like take out a city block, and sometimes did. So when you were working at Dangerfields, did you make any friends with anybody who became famous later?
Well, you know, I remember one night, the night before I was there, Ella Fitzgerald was working there.
Wow.
You know, and a lot of big time comedians, I can't even remember offhand, they were there all the time.
Right.
Did Ella Fitzgerald ever break the glass with her voice? Did she ever do that trick?
I don't think that was for real, but anyway, she.
I thought it was. I saw it on TV.
It's on a commercial for Memorex.
Yeah.
Remember that? Gee, that was Dangerfields was big league. You know,
Yeah.
That was big league.
Well, I mean, that means that you were a pretty talented guy if your band could play there.
Well, you know, it was funny because we started out with this band back in the early 70s, and we all wanted a record deal. That's why we had records like this. We were trying to get a hit record.
Yeah.
And one night at Dangerfields, somebody said to me, came up afterwards and said, "Oh, we love your band. Would you work our wedding?" And I said, we're looking for a record deal. We're not a wedding band. I said, well, maybe I should look into this, you know? And I did. And I said, oh my goodness, we worked at Dangerfields. He was cheap. He didn't like to pay the people, you know? I think we were making $50 a night at Dangerfields.
And you had to split it like 5 ways?
No, $50 a piece. We had
okay. Everybody gets their $5.
Yeah. And then said, would you like to do our wedding? And I said, no, we're not a wedding band. And I looked into it and I said, wedding bands are making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, up to $7,000 for a wedding. So I talked to the guys in the band and I said, well, let's try it and see. So because we were like polished club act, we started doing these wedding showcases and we started booking weddings like left and right. And we started working with agencies. I think in 1 year in 1987 or something like that, we did 100 weddings in 1 year.
And you were getting like $7,000 a wedding?
Yeah. Well, not that.
I was going to say, that's a good year, $700,000 for playing weddings.
Well, each year it got more. I mean, I think we started out making $4,000 a wedding, then $5,000. Year it got a little bit more. And then at the end of the year, it all came to a screeching halt because disc jockeys took over.
Oh, right.
And that was the live music, But, we were making a lot of money back in those days.
I know you can make a career out of weddings because that's how Michael Bublé got famous. Was he performed at a wedding, and that's how he was discovered.
Yeah, during the busy season, I would do 5 weddings in a weekend. Friday night, Saturday, 2 on Sunday.
That's a good bit of pocket change back in the day.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But all good things come to an end.
That seems to be the case.
So during that time,
go ahead, Greg.
Were you doing journalism then, or you were just a musician?
I would work at Fox News, like on let's say a Saturday, and I would go with my PA system in the back of my station wagon, finish my job at Fox News at 5 or 6 o'clock, head to New Jersey for my 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock wedding that night. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And did
Yep.
the guys at the news agency know that you were doing this?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We saw a lot of weddings for people that work there.
Did you ever get to be on your own network
No,
performing for a wedding? Oh, that's too bad.
no, we did a couple of television things locally, but
Yeah.
nothing. And once you get into the wedding business, you're kind of giving up. Michael Bublé is an exception.
Yes.
And once you go into the wedding, you're a wedding band, and you're not going to get signed by Arista.
That's where bands go to die usually
Yeah,
when they've given up.
yeah. So what happened was, as I was doing the journalism and the broadcasting, that kind of took off. So I had to get out of the band business, and I did. I transitioned into hosting shows.
So when did you know that you had taken off in the journalism business where you went, okay, I'm doing well now? I mean, like, I know that this is like my path. This is where I want to be.
I started to do a show back in the on Staten Island for Time Warner, and it was called Staten Island Live, and it was just like Laughing Live. The difference was I wasn't interviewing Joe Pesci. I was interviewing the borough president of Staten Island, the police commissioner, newsmakers of the day.
Did you have your own type of suspenders that you wore too?
No. I was cooler than that.
Oh, so you're saying Larry King wasn't cool? Fine.
I liked Larry. I met him several times. I liked him very much. I think, they got rid of him a little sooner than they should have.
Yeah. No, he was an excellent interviewer.
But when I was doing this show, I realized that, that I was good at it, and that people that I knew from Fox they weren't Uncle Joe patting me on the back and saying, Mickey, you do a great job. These were people in the business, the top people in broadcasting, reinforcing what I was trying to do and saying, Mickey, you're really good at this. Stick to it.
Yeah, I watched a number of your interviews, and like right off the bat, I realized that you really seem to be interested in the people in front of you whenever you're talking to them, and you're really good at playing off of whatever answers they give you to ask your next question. And I really appreciated that. I was like, all right, this is a guy who's got a quick mind and he's able to make people comfortable. And then I watched, I think, one of the full Joan Rivers interviews. And at the end of it, she's like, you are a fabulous interviewer. And I'm like, well, that's quite a thing for somebody like her to say, who's been interviewed by like thousands of people.
And she usually just insults people. So
Yeah.
it's a double compliment.
Talk show. So because I was getting positive feedback from people like Joan Rivers and Maury Povich and people like that, I said, I'm going to stick with this and do the best I can with it, because I wasn't getting people saying to me, maybe you should go back to singing.
At least I didn't say, quit your day job when you were singing, but
Your night job.
And I tell you, one of the keys I think to my success as a host and an interviewer has been my ability to do consistent, intensive research on the people that I interview. And I don't know if it comes across on the shows that you watched, but I do a lot of research. And I think when you're prepared, you can kind of hang with anybody.
well, that kind of comes from your news background too. So does that mean that you went to their homes and interviewed their parents and things like that for your research? That you stalked them for a couple of
The
weeks?
secret of my interviewing prowess is I stole it from Edward R. Murrow, and I smoke while I interview people.
That's okay.
So it gives me gravitas.
Snyder did that as well. Remember Tom Snyder?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow Show.
Did you know Tom Snyder? Did you get
No.
to meet him?
I would have. But I did have Dick Cavett on my show,
Oh, wow. He's great.
and he was fabulous, But I want, the preparation thing. I kind of learned it early on, how important it was. But then I remember early on, I had Christopher Plummer on the show, and he was like the oldest guy to win an Oscar. He was like 80 something, 88 or something like that.
Right.
So I have an assistant that the week or two before the interviews, they give me a packet with all the research, that I would need to compile the interview. And when I was getting ready for Christopher Plummer, there was a Post-it on the top of the packet. and it said you should look at, watch this link before you do your research. So I go to my computer, the link, and it's a radio interview with Christopher Plummer at some small station in Ohio. And it goes like this. And Christopher Plummer, Sound of Music and all award-winning Oscar winner. Welcome to our WKRP in Cincinnati. Thank you so much for being on our show. Nice being here, son. The interviewer then asked Christopher 2 or 3 other questions. And the reason he was on the show and the reason he was going to be on my show was he was releasing his autobiography, which was like 450 pages, So Christopher, after the 3rd question, stopped the interviewer. He said, "Excuse me, son, did you read my book?" And the interviewer, in his best Jackie Gleason, hummida, hummida, no, but I've been meaning. And here is a click. That was, he hung up on the guy, and that was it. So I said, "Man, I better read some of this book or I'm in trouble." So here we go. So Christopher Plummer, now it's my turn. He's sitting in front of me. Christopher Plummer, welcome to Profiles. Pleasure having you on the show. Would it be okay if I started off this interview reading a couple of passages from your book?
Really?
I have to admit, Mickey, that I did not read your book, and hopefully you won't hang up on us.
Well, you could have read a couple of things, and But anyway, so he once I did that, he said to me, "God bless you, my son." He was all in. He said, "I don't know how you read that book, 400 and some pages." I said, "I couldn't put it down, Christopher." And at that point,
Let's say that one more time. You broke up.
he was hooked.
Oh, got it.
He was all in once he realized that I had read his book or thought I read his book.
So how much of his book did you actually read?
I went through, I speed read.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have like 400 books behind me of guess
Yeah,
I've
that's
had.
impressive.
So I can't read every book cover to cover, but I can go through on a speed reading tempo and take out the most important parts.
Did you
Lot
go
of
to Evelyn Wood
skimming.
School of Speed Reading?
No, I learned it from John F. Kennedy, actually.
Like
Huh?
he was there with you, teaching you how to speed read?
No, but I read where that he read the New York Times in 7.5 minutes.
That's amazing.
The Sunday Times.
That's even more amazing.
Yeah. So I said, maybe there's something to this. So I kind of trained myself over the years to speed read.
So you read like in portions, because I remember reading a book about speed reading, and I got like some concepts of it, and I went, I actually kind of want to digest the words a little more.
Yeah. Well, what you do, you speed read and then you mark, and you speed read and you mark, and then you go back later to the things you felt were really relevant.
Yeah, I mean,
Read
that
the
makes
Daily
sense.
News comic section in 7.5 minutes. I was good at that.
So
Yeah.
what would you mark in the comic section, Greg, for reading later?
Marmaduke and Dondi. That's all I cared about.
Marmaduke and what?
Dondi. Remember Dondi?
Dondi.
That terrible strip. It
Is
was
that
on the first page.
like Prince Valiant?
It was the strip that nobody liked, but for some reason it was on the first page of the Daily News comic section. It wrapped the paper. So it was like, nobody likes this comic. Why do you always have Dondi on the front page?
It's like none of the comics were really that funny unless you were a kid.
Yeah.
Peanuts. I like Peanuts still. They were good.
Yeah.
That's where all the dad jokes come from. But anyway, getting back to Mickey, since we're digressing. So what would you say was like the most horrible experience you've had in your career? It doesn't have to be horrible, but like the one that's most unpleasant, the thing where you went, I think I might hang this all up because I don't want to deal with that ever again.
Well, let me go a step further. Maybe how about the most embarrassing moment?
Yeah,
Okay.
do tell.
So, like the pants came down.
I'm interviewing Joe Montana,
Okay.
four-time Super Bowl champ, right? The quarterback, Joe Montana.
Did you call him Joan Rivers by accident?
No. What happened? He was at a memorabilia conference in New Jersey. So his manager, who I met somewhere along the way, said, "Mickey, come to the hotel. You're going to do the interview from his suite in New Jersey. Get there at 4:30, set your lights, your camera, and at 5:30, I'll be there with Joe. I said, sounds like a plan to me. We got there, we set up our lights, our cameras, and there was even a nice spread there, of cold cuts and turkey ham and potato salad, salads. I said, the class act, and we're all set. Lights are ready to go. We had a little bite to eat. 5:30, Joe walks through the door. The manager's looking around the room, and the first thing I see is he's giving me this, like, come here, I want to talk to you. And it's before the interview even started. I said, oh my God, what did I do? So he brings me into the corner. He looks me straight in the eye and he said, who ate Joe's dinner?
Wait, this is the entire spread of cold cuts is gone by the time they get there?
That wasn't for us. That was for Joe.
Oh my Lord.
So it's like you and your crew ate all of the food.
Yeah. That's, it's like getting your hand caught in the cookie jar. I said, oh, I'm so sorry, and I even said that I don't remember the interview with Joe Montana that well because it was a long time ago. But I do remember starting the interview off saying, Joe, I apologize for eating your dinner. And he said, I don't know if he let us off the hook. It was just being nice. He said, I would never eat that garbage. I'm going to a nice Italian restaurant after. But I guess the lesson there is never assume anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. As long as you didn't snort all this cocaine, you would have been really picked off.
I'll never forget. You assume that's for you, but it wasn't.
So that was the incident where you said maybe I should no longer be in this business, or?
No, I've never. I've never felt that way. I've always felt that there's something bigger and more important and more interesting the next time. It's almost like we've done over 5 episodes, and it's almost like doing a term paper for each one.
Right, I got you.
You're covering the entire life of a person in 30 minutes. That's not an easy task. But it's that one interview, you're on to the next and to the next, and you're always trying to get a better one and to do it better. So never felt like that. And as I get older, now I have to also consider the people that have worked for me for these past 20 years, how loyal they've been, so I can't say, listen, guys, I'm going to pack it in. I'm going to go to Florida and play golf for the next 5 years.
Well, you can do that in Staten Island. So
yeah, well, whatever. But I feel that I'm loyal to the people that have been loyal to me over the years. So I want to keep going and keep the show getting better, not only for myself but for the people that have been loyal to me.
Which of these celebrities
on your show?
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Did you ever have Joe Franklin? Do you have any Joe Franklin stories?
No, I tried to get him, but he didn't want to leave his office over there in Midtown,
That's because he has a piece of furniture in his office is why.
Yeah, I know. Did you ever see his?
It's crazy.
I've heard of it, yeah.
I mean, he presented, but he could go like in a big he could go right to everything he needed. He knew where everything was. He was an amazing guy, but I never did get him for the show. I tried.
So which person did you interview that gave you the most surprising information? Like you were kind of going, I had never expected this from this person, if there was something like that.
Yeah, I think there was. I mean, Joan Rivers was one. You'd never know what she was going to say.
Understandable.
Smokey Robinson gave me a lot of information. Tony Orlando, for instance, gave me information that he told me on the show. He said, Mickey, I'm telling you this. I've never told anybody this before.
That the mustache wasn't real?
No. But he was doing his first show on CBS. Jackie Gleason was his first guest. Right? He was the biggest star on television at that time. And as they were rehearsing, Jackie was in the audience and Jackie was sitting behind Tony, and Dawn, Tony's backup singers, were rehearsing on stage.
So this is the variety show, Tony Orlando and Dawn?
Yes, that was it.
And Jackie Gleason was coming on?
He was yes, this is the first show. Jackie Gleason was the first. And as they were sitting there in the audience and Dawn was rehearsing a number, Jackie Gleason made a racial racial slur about the two girls because they were both African American.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony couldn't give him a pass. He turned around and said, Jackie, you owe me an apology and you owe the two girls an apology. And with Jackie with that said, who are you? You're a snot-nosed kid. You're talking to me. I'm the big, screw you. And he got up and he walked out. The executives at CBS said, Tony, you just chased the biggest star in television for your first show. What are you doing? He said, I couldn't let him get away with that. So CBS executives now went to scramble to replace Jackie Gleason. And Tony went to his dressing room. About an hour later, the knock on the door. This is what Tony told me during the interview. He said, Jackie Gleason. Opened the door, was Jackie Gleason. And Jackie Gleason, threw his script at Tony and said, is this my script? And Tony said, yes, it is, sir. Jackie said, open it to the first page. And Tony did, and in writing it said, I apologize, Jackie Gleason.
Wow.
Said from that day, they became very close friends because Tony stood up to him.
Yeah.
And before every show that Tony ever did on CBS, Jackie Gleason called him prior to the show and wished him good.
And so Tony hadn't told anybody else the story before you?
Ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stuff like that happened occasionally during our 500 episodes. But I developed a good relationship with Tony, to the point where I have him on speed dial. I'll give you his number. But each time, like I've written 2 books, this one here, and the latest is a coffee table book, Inside Celebrity Profiles, A Visual Journey.
Mm-hmm.
And time I would text me and say, Tony, can you give me a little blurb that I could put on the book, on the back of the book about your profiles? And I'm telling you, each time within 10 minutes, I had that blurb in my email.
That's a good friend.
That's a good friend. And I'm telling a lot of the people I reached out to, some of them didn't respond. Others responded, but you'd have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get a response,
So at Tony Orlando, though, you did have to knock 3 times.
Oh, yeah. But he's legitimately super, super guy.
It's like, Tony, I want you. I'm knocking. Here you go. But that brings us actually right into our client for the day, which is
perfect segue.
Dad Jokes, Pinnacle of Western Civilization. And essentially the concept here is that, human society has been around for thousands of years, and all of our experiences have brought together really bad humor. And that's kind of what's occurred often in this particular program, because I get accused of things a lot. So I don't know, Greg, if you know this, but you know what Forrest Gump's password is?
I'm afraid to ask. What is it?
One Forrest one.
Okay.
Say that one more time. I missed it.
One Forrest one. Have you not seen that movie?
Yeah, I get the pun, but
that's an example of dad jokes. But I've had this theory I've been tossing around that dad jokes are more like Gen X jokes or baby boomer jokes. Like they were ones that were told back then, and then as the people got older and started having kids, then they became dad jokes. That's kind of like the theory that I have regarding word dad joke.
But how come generations before didn't call them dad jokes? Every father probably had.
I think at the time they called them little kid jokes because I think only little kids told those jokes.
Yeah.
And then those little kids got older. But I think nobody was funny in the 1910s, I think that's what it was. I don't think there were any senses of humor until like the later decades of the 20th
Until Charlie
century.
Chaplin came around.
Right.
He invented humor.
Well, that was all slapstick. It wasn't like jokes. There wasn't like maybe W.C. Field started bringing it in. I don't know, Mickey. I hate to say your age, but I'm guessing you're probably about 10 to 15 years older than we are. So you might be a little closer to that.
Early 70s.
Say that one more time.
In my early 70s.
Okay.
Wow. You look great.
I thought you said
I didn't think you were that old.
I thought you said he was born in the early 70s. I'm like, oh, God, I'm really old. So about 15 years, Greg, like I said, 15.
Do you have a favorite dad joke, Mickey?
No. No. My suit, you know.
Say that again.
Comedy was not my strong suit.
That is something I noticed in his interviews, Greg, is that he wasn't cracking jokes. You know, he was
Nah.
a very serious man. He got his information. He taught those people a lesson.
And then he gets out.
He's like, he's in there. He lets them be funny. So you've interviewed a number of comedians, though, right? I know you had Sebastian Maniscalco on one, and Joan Rivers, and
He was great. Let me think who else. I had Rita Rudner.
I like Rita.
And believe it or not, one day I was in the office and the phone rang, and somebody in the office picked it up, and then they said, "Mickey, it's for you. It's David Brenner."
Nice.
And David Brenner says, "Hi, Mickey, how you doing? I saw your show. I want to be on it."
Wow.
It's out of the blue. Was he like he was a New Yorker at the time? Was he living in New York?
He had places in Vegas and a place in New York at the time. So I had him on. He was fabulous, But interestingly, at the time, he was dating or engaged to Ty Babylonia, the figure skater.
I remember her.
Yeah, Ty and Randy was the duo. They were figure skating together. So he had, after that interview, if I would have her on the show. And I did.
You know, when I would hear her name, and I always think of that song from Steve Martin, which was the King Tut song, because it was there was a line in it which is
When in Babylonia.
Babylonia, I think. It's like, yeah. I'm like, so I always wondered, did she get her name from that song? Or was that
was her real name? Her father was a policeman in Los Angeles.
What national is that? Italian last name?
I think no. I think her father, if I'm not correct, was she's biracial. He was African American, and her mother was white.
Huh? Wouldn't have pictured Babylonia as an African name.
Changed their names, along the way for whatever reason.
Right, because her first name would be Thai, and then it would make you think either a necktie or from Thailand.
Yeah, and the mother might have been Polynesian or something like that.
Well, the Rastafarians in Jamaica always talk about Babylon, so that makes sense.
You think that would be? So, Mickey, do you have a sense of humor? Do you tell any jokes around people and around your friends?
Not really. I'm bad at it. Remember the punchline at the time.
I'm the same way.
That's what
I have a good joke, but I can't tell them.
I have words on the screen for because I've got no memory.
Yeah, and of course, sometimes guests that you have, the big comedians, sometimes they come on and they don't want to be funny. They just want you to interview them about their life. They don't feel necessity to be funny.
They're like, I am not a trained monkey. You cannot make me do this. Right.
Yeah, you got a guy like Frank Caliendo. He's the guy from the NFL, impersonator of many people.
Right.
He went from one to the other. That's all he kept doing. I just had, what's her name on the show for the third time, Marilyn Michaels. She's hilarious. She was an impressionist who they did a show in the 70s, the Copycats. Do you remember that at all?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Really, she's one of the best female impersonators. But that's all she went from, into every question I asked her, she answered it in a famous character, whether it was Elizabeth Taylor or
maybe it's the impersonators, because Caliendo is definitely like that too. He does lots of impersonations.
That's what he would. I'd ask him a question and he'd answer it like John Madden.
Right. Yeah, Madden is definitely his go-to. Madden, I think George Bush were like his two main ones.
Yeah, and then I had Rich Little. He did. I'd ask him a question and he'd answer it like Richard Nixon.
Another impersonator. So were there any of the non-impersonators who were actually? I mean, everyone knows Robin Williams. You couldn't stop him once he was on an interview.
But like Rita Rudner, she's famous Las Vegas comedian.
Right.
She didn't crack a joke through the whole interview.
Did you call her on it and say, Rita, why aren't you funny?
Well, one thing you learn, you can't control the way people are going to be.
Of course.
And you can't even control the tempo. I had Eric Roberts on the show years ago, and
He's an interesting guy, Eric Roberts. Yeah.
But he was very thought provoking.
Mhm.
You'd ask a question, and he would sit back and analyze the question before he would come back with his answer. And it made me a little uncomfortable until I realized this is really good. Taking the time, he's putting his thoughts together, and he's giving great answers. So, as an interviewer, you can't control the tempo. You have to go with the tempo sometimes.
Did you ever have a guest on who you thought was going to be really serious? It was funny as hell. Like someone like, oh, this guy is kind of dry.
Like George Foreman or something?
Well, I was just going to mention it. Foreman was hell. He was great. And, I wanted to talk, all I wanted to talk about was him and Ali fighting, the rumble in the jungle, and which he claimed. That's another thing. He told me that he felt, you asked me before about information that I was surprised I got from him.
Uh-huh.
And when he talked about that, he claimed he was drugged during that fight.
Drugged?
Drugged. They put something in his water. And he said it was his own handlers that drugged him. So he felt they were approached by other people and took money to put something in his water for that fight.
Whoa.
Wow. Well, I
That's a scoop.
wouldn't put it past people if that actually happened.
Yeah, it probably did. And as I wanted to talk to him more about his fighting career, and all he wanted to talk about was his business career.
His grills?
Yes. Like when I did the grills, he said, they asked me what I wanted, George. And I said, well, I have 7 sons named George. Can I have a grill for each? But that's what he was going to get. And he said, like 3 months later, he got a check for $250,000.
See, I would have asked him about that too, because he's kind of like the ultimate dad joke who played a giant prank on all of his kids by naming them all George. It's like, why would you do that to your kids? They're all just like in Braille or something. It's like, how can you tell them apart whenever you call their name? George, come here. Which one do you want? They're just numbers.
When he did the interview, one of his sons was there at the interview.
Was it George?
Well, there has to be. They're all. So, as I'm pushing him to talk about Ali, and I met Ali as well. I spent the day. But that's another story. But when I asked him I wanted to talk about his fighting career, he was more interested in business. And he said, they stopped me at one point. He said, Mickey, the one thing I've learned about business, he said, as an entrepreneur now, he said, there's no such thing as a good business deal unless both parties are happy. And I thought about that, and I said, that's an odd way of most people are cutthroat.
Yeah.
And they win in business, right? They're not looking to make it 50-50. They want to win.
Yeah, you usually hear it's the opposite.
Just the opposite. So I thought that was a very unique way of approaching business, and maybe that's why he's so successful at it.
Well, his revitalization was fascinating to witness. Where he came from essentially obscurity to suddenly back in the limelight again.
Yes.
And he just became this really interesting character where you just kind of enjoyed seeing him. No matter where he popped up, you're like, oh, wow, George Foreman, I like this guy. And he would always have this enthusiasm about him.
Yes. They said when they first started, people hated him.
Yeah.
He was the bad guy.
Right.
He said then one night he was fighting Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico. And after the fight, he felt he had died for a couple of minutes, that his heart stopped, and it was a hot night, and he thought he was done. And he said then he saw God. This is what he said during the interview. And his whole life changed, and he became a different person from that night moving forward. And he wrote books about it. And then everyone loved it.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can have that epiphany, and then suddenly just things move in a different direction.
He said, I wasn't even able to tell my mother that I loved her before I died. And his just whole life changed from that night forward.
Did you have any moments like that in your own life, Mickey?
No, not really.
Where maybe now you want to go become a boxer?
Nah. I look back at my life and I say, Jesus, if I had it to do over again, I would do it just the way I did it. You know, I was able to do a lot of different things, be successful at a lot of different things. And most importantly, I've been happy my whole life. So I wouldn't change anything.
You know, I look at your life and I go, I'd like to have your life too, honestly.
Me too.
It looks like it's like a steady thing. You kept moving along with where you wanted to go. You created a very solid niche for yourself in
Yes.
your area. You know, but there is one thing we are aware of that apparently is an unfulfilled need, which is kind of the ultimate dad joke to be been played on you, is that you haven't been able to get Tom Jones come on your show, and most guys are kind of, at least they used to be, jealous of Tom Jones because all their women's underwear would wind up on Tom Jones's stage, and that's kind of like the ultimate joke on dads right there. But
I haven't met him.
yeah,
When I was at Fox, we went to see him. Matter of fact, we sat in. Tom Jones gave us his tickets, you know, front row tickets to sit. But we went backstage, and this was 1980.
okay.
And
So 40 years later, you still haven't gotten to sit down with him.
but
If only, he only knew.
I almost had him about 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then it never. I had Engelbert Humperdinck, but I never had Tom Jones.
Well, he was like the poor man's Tom Jones.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Interesting story with Engelbert. I think you'd appreciate this, because doing the research, I read in his auto Engelbert that he made love to 3,000 women.
All at once?
No, over his career.
Oh, okay, that's good. That would have been
That's
a
quite a
mess.
night.
That would have been a mess if it was all at once.
But I wanted it was true, you know. So I said, Eng is what they call him, you know. Eng, I said, is it true that you've made love? He said in your book to 3,000 women, and he said, let me put it to you this way: less work for my wife.
He farmed it out.
That was now. Tom Jones was no better. Tom Jones.
So they were married that whole time. I didn't know that.
What, Tom Jones was married to Engelbert Humperdinck?
No,
Yeah.
they were married to the same woman since they were teenagers. Both
So-
not the woman.
Oh, since they were teenagers.
Yes, but Tom married his wife of 60 years. She just passed away when he was 16,
Wow.
and I think Engelbert was 17, and they stayed with those women their whole lives.
Those are some very understanding and tolerant
Yes.
women.
Had the credit card limit that they had, you might be a little.
I mean, some women are less tolerant even having the credit card because they want to then have the credit card on their own, knowing that they have that information about the guy who gave them the credit card.
Right, yes, but Tom is 80 years old now.
Tom's
And he-
what?
Tom Jones is 80 years old.
Yeah.
Lives in England. He in London. He's you know he left L.A. He's not here anymore. But when I met him in 1980, we spent about a half hour with him, and I asked him. I said, well, you know, Tom, and he's really shy. You know, he's shy in person.
Mm-hmm.
When he gets on stage, he's totally different person. And I said, at the time, he was working all the time. And I said, why do you work so hard? You don't have to. I mean, he was already making a fortune. And he went out and he opened up the door, and the room was filling up. And he said, you know, you see these people out there? He said, they're not going to be there forever. There's going to come a day where they're not going to want to come and see me sing. So he said, until that day comes, I'm going to give everything I have. I give it 100%. I enjoy every moment of it. And here he is, interestingly, you know, 80 is like that was 40 years ago. And he's still, you know, filling up wherever he plays. And he just put a new album out, and he's on The Voice in the UK Voice. He's one of the panel. His career has never been busier.
So why is Tom Jones like your
Moby Dick.
That's right, your white whale? You know, why him? Why not somebody else? What made Tom Jones your fixation?
Well, because I always I was so inspired by him as a singer and an entertainer. He's the reason that really I got into that career in the first place. He was my inspiration.
I gotcha. He was your hero.
Have
You
you ever
wanted women's panties thrown at you.
seen? Have you ever live? in concert?
I've seen, not live, but I've certainly seen him perform on TV. I have a lot of respect for Tom Jones. I mean, he's got some power. He's dynamic. He's very charismatic. So yeah, I get it.
Well, I put him by himself, him and Elvis, but Tom I thought had a much better voice, but Elvis was great as well. And on the female end, I thought nobody was better than Tina Turner.
Yeah, Tina was fantastic.
I was a little boy growing up in the 70s. I thought Tom Jones was like, oh, that's what my mom and dad like. So he's square. And then I saw clips from his 60s TV show where he had like he goes toe to toe with Little Richard and Janis Joplin. That guy could rock and roll. He was fierce. He was so good.
On his show, he had Boy George. I felt sorry for Boy George.
Yeah, he can't compete with Tom Jones.
You can't compete with Tom Jones. It was embarrassing,
I recently came across this duet of Tom Jones and Van Morrison, and typically no one can kind of outpower Van Morrison on a song. And then there was Tom Jones who's on it, totally overpowering Van Morrison. I'm like, well, there it just goes to show you. But I always kind of considered Tom Jones to be the British Neil Diamond, in my opinion. Just in terms of popularity and a lot of glitter on their jackets. That's...
Yeah. I mean, I saw him live, and the women were just being a frenzy over him.
So who of the current crop of celebrities that are coming out these days are you excited about and would like to finally get onto your program?
Sure, that's a good question. But I think Lady Gaga would be one.
Yeah, she's a New Yorker. She should do it.
Yes, and she's an amazing talent. But, we were talking about it the other day. There's not a lot out there that would say, oh, they're great. I would love to have them on the show. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, stables of performers were unlimited. Like, do you know who the first act that's going to be performing at Madison Square Garden when the pandemic is over now? It's almost over. Who do you think the first act at the Garden is going to be in concert? Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber, okay.
I mean, I have no interest in Justin Bieber whatsoever, right?
Why? He's your friend.
I don't know. You got Tom Jones, you got Elvis, you got Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber should be driving, their limo.
You can't tell jokes. We have learned.
That's true. What does he do? Is he a singer? I don't know what he does.
Who was that?
Justin Bieber. What does he do?
Got it. Yeah, he's a singer, but he made his fame on YouTube is basically where he came from. Yeah. And then I think he got more famous from like breaking various laws and his tattoos or something.
So when I hear something weird is Justin Timberlake. My girlfriend made me watch a concert of his. It was on cable.
That's ex-girlfriend, Greg.
Yeah, ex-girlfriend. And a girlfriend at the time. And I got to say, he was quite a performer. It was something else. And I don't like Justin Timberlake, but some people can still perform. Like I
think very good. He's one of the real good ones in the younger Gen X, whatever the years. But he's a good singer. He's also a good actor, and I think he's a pretty nice person.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Well, are you able to get like maybe any of the cast or crew from Saturday Night Live to come on your show? I would think that they would be key for your demographic, possibly.
Yeah, I mean Davidson. I used to work with his mother.
Oh yeah, he's right out of Staten Island. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I just had Billy Porter because he's huge now. And I have the Broadway people I was getting consistently, but that's shut down now.
Oh, right. Yeah. So much is shut down.
Once this is over.
So do you have Davidson lined up? Because, Staten Island, he needs to come on your show.
Matter of fact, I was just talking to the mother recently. What happened was a girl, an obsessive fan broke into the mother's house because he was living with his mother.
Right.
And they had to get her arrested. So he moved out because of that incident.
Yeah, because I thought he was never going to leave his mother's basement.
Yeah, right. So he place right near the Staten Island Ferry, a place called Bay Street Landing. Very nice.
Did you ever get to interview Patty Lapone? Patty Lapone?
Lapone?
Sorry, I slipped.
No. As I said, the biggest one I had was Billy Porter, who's now the rage of Broadway.
I have to say, I have no idea who Billy Porter is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Billy Porter is the star of the popular TV series Pose. You know?
Okay. No.
All right. And
We're old
also,
men.
he was won Best Actor in a Musical for his lead Kinky Boots, which
Kinky Boots I've heard of, yeah.
was Cyndi Lauper's music, and he was won Best Actor on Broadway for that role. But he's a big star. He does New Year's Eve on Channel 7 or whatever it is from New Orleans every year.
Got it. Well, actually, it reminded me, I think I had heard somewhere that you had Howard Bloom on your show not long ago.
Matter of fact, he was one of the first as we were coming back from the pandemic.
Got it. Yeah, we actually just interviewed him last week, and he became like one of our very favorite guests that we've had.
He's amazing.
He's a fascinating fellow. Now, did you interview him in person?
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't zoomed through for profiles. Okay.
Right. But it was, again, what we do is, I think we do good in person, in studio episodes. We did not like the Zoom feel because everyone is doing. You're doing it, and I compete with you because that's not what we do.
Yeah, ours is this way. We have another co-host who wasn't able to be here today. He's in Florida, so this works well for our particular format. We definitely would like to somehow change the quality of the streaming at some point, but that's kind of the nature of the beast these days.
Right.
But anyway, I think that we were going to ask Howard Bloom a question, and I don't know if he did this when he was on your show. Was he wearing a shirt that had his name tag on it?
Yes.
Did you happen to ask him about that? Because we forgot to, and we really wanted an answer to that.
I don't think he's got any other clothes.
It's like he has one shirt, you're saying?
Black shirt, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. His black shirt with his
black shirt.
And Bloom over. I think it's right in the shirt. Yeah,
that would be a very different answer than I would be expecting. The answer is that's my only shirt, as opposed to I keep it there to remember who I am.
I can't imagine having 10 of those.
Oh, I could.
Yeah,
I could see that organized by day too, like one every day. There would be one.
Did he a lot of good Michael Jackson stories?
We didn't actually delve into the Michael Jackson area. We kind of did with his whole life story for the most part, going all the way up to when he had his illness, and we just ran out of time at that stage because we could have talked to him for days probably.
You get a word wise.
We found our ways. We found our ways in there. There was. Yeah. It's definitely. I did enough research into interviews that he had done to go, okay, these are the moments where I could ask specific questions. He's actually he's pretty good at allowing that to occur too. And he did let us go off on our tangents as well, and he was very polite in that regard.
He was telling such good stories that I didn't really want to say anything. I just wanted him to keep spinning his yarns and telling me stuff.
He's the real thing.
Yeah, but if you're strict to a half an hour format, I can imagine that would be like a hair puller. Where you're okay.
Let me say this: the episode moved. There weren't too many lulls in the action.
No, it's like he's definitely. I was like, this guy's definitely trained as a publicist because of all the interviews. It's like he's got his specific message that he wants to get across, and he will communicate that, and he will get that to happen. But I think we've probably come to your time now, but I do have one final question, which is, I've heard that you always ask what somebody's desire for their legacy to be whenever you're in the show.
I always do. That's been the last, and I've got some great answers, and it's all in my book, from the projects to profiles. And I'm going to read to you what I wrote in the book about what I hope my legacy will be. That was your question, yes?
Definitely,
Mhm.
yes.
I'm going to read what I put. But before I do that, my favorite answer of all the ones was that I got was from Chuck Barris from the Gong Show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is that before your time, the Gong Show?
No.
No.
We're very familiar with Chuck Barris.
I
Yeah.
loved the Gong Show as a kid.
Chuck Barris is like one of my heroes.
Fascinating man, right?
Yeah.
So I said, Chuck, what do you hope your legacy will be? Without hesitation, he looked at me and said, Mickey, I want it written on my tombstone. Gonged at last.
Gonged with the wind.
So he ends up dying like 6 years after that. And I read in the Times that's he got his wish. That's what's on his tombstone.
This is perfect because he ended our show with a dad joke.
Did it?
You just did it. You made the dad joke with the epitaph.
That's what I can remember off the top of my head was Jesse Ventura.
Okay, I bet he was fascinating.
I've had him on 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
And he said, what do you hope your legacy? He said, I want to be the last man on earth without a cell phone.
I resisted that for so long. I was like, I don't want that long of a leash on me, and I finally got one.
Have one. All
Wow.
Right, so in my book, I was asked, what do you hope your legacy will be by a reporter? And I said, I just hope that after producing 500 episodes over 20 years, that I've entertained people, educated people, and most importantly, along the way, perhaps we've inspired people to be better.
That's a good legacy.
Do you get stopped at like supermarkets or anything? People go, hey, you're Mickey Burns. I see your show all the time.
Yeah, especially in the subway.
Yeah, especially in the subway.
That's your demographic.
His demographic are just subway riders.
And Chud.
Yeah, I mean, you hang holding on to somebody like 6 inches away from you. I the other night.
It's like, do I know you?
So the subway would be number one, and they say, oh, I love that interview with Deepak Chopra. That was great. And on the street, a lot of times, you stop at a red light, waiting to cross, but you're closer to people, and they don't feel awkward about saying they might know you. Yeah. So, yeah, those are the two. That happens all the time. But that's also telling me that we must be doing something right. People are watching the show. That's what it is.
That is great. So what is the future for you in television? I know you're the president of a network, Quest Communications. Where do you go from here?
Well, I guess at this point, we continue doing what we do. We love doing it. We're on a network that has a viewing demographic of 20 million potential viewers. And everyone with a TV set in a 50-mile radius of New York City gets our show. That's the number one market in the world. So the only thing that would be, I guess, a bigger accomplishment would be on a national network.
Do you want to do that?
I'm not sure, because I love what we're doing now. It's fine with me. We're in New York, so it gives us access to the biggest stars. And I like the network. It's a great vehicle for us.
It sounds like you've definitely fit where you need to be. So
I know.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on, Mickey. We totally appreciate it.
I love your law firm.
Well, next week we have a very special episode. We're doing what we're calling our pizza show. And the pizza show has to do with the fact that when we first started this, which is almost a year from now, almost our anniversary is next month, and we were making about a penny an episode or something like that from the platform we were using, the podcasting platform. We're like, all right, well, and then Greg was like, I could use a pizza. So we decided we would finally, when we made enough money from that, we'd buy Greg a pizza. So our pizza show, we finally have collected enough cash where we're all going to get pizzas at the same time and eat it. So we're letting our listeners know that the pizza show is finally coming.
Edward R. Murrow never did that, did he?
That's right.
Mention my show one to your viewers.
Please do. Anything else you want to promote? Your other book as well? Go ahead and take that time.
Projects, The Profiles, a memoir by Mickey Burns. And you can get it on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, Walmart.com. And my latest book is a coffee table book. Same way, it's on all the same, same platforms. And the name of that book is Inside Celebrity Profiles: A Visual Journey by Mickey.
Do you have a copy of that book to hold up to, or?
You want to give me 2 seconds?
Yeah. Feel free.
Oh.
Grab that book. 1, 2. Time's up. You're done.
That's a dad joke.
Hold on.
You can see all the books. Let's see what he's got in his house. Okay, he came back.
Ooh, fancy. It's all glossy.
It is.
You know, what we did was, I'll tell you real quick what happened. During the pandemic, I've had the same photographer on set for 20 years. And during the pandemic, I said to him one day, I said, how many photos have you taken over 20 years? He said, I have no idea, but I'll go into the computer. I'll let you know tonight. And he called me back. He said, Mickey, I have 15,462 photos. I said,
that's a lot of photos.
So I called the book publisher, and within a week we had a contract to do a coffee table book, which we did over the last summer.
Well, you have a mutual publicist with Leland Sklar, who's a very famous bass player. He's been with like thousands and thousands of recordings. And he did a similar coffee table book. I don't know if you know, but it's all pictures of people flipping him off.
Okay.
Not quite the same insights, I think, but
well, yeah. What I did was I didn't know how to approach it, so I broke it into categories, such as the singers that we've had, the actors, each chap, the comedians, the athletes, and that's how we came up with the idea for the book.
You think about doing like the least interesting to the most interesting? You don't think that would go over well?
I know people, guests.
Well, again, I want to thank you very much, Mickey, and I wish you great success on your books. Everybody should get those. Again, he's either on Amazon, Walmart. You can actually go to his house and ask him for one. He might give you one if you can track him down.
But you guys, it's been a pleasure being on your show. You're really good at what you do, both of you, and it was a pleasure spending some time this afternoon.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we finally got you on. This has been the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
Yes.
And scene.
You've left the offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. It's over. It's over. It's time for you to go home. It's over. It's over. Go away now.